All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Look, we got 50 people in class. Should be a lot of fun. I see Linda, I see Cher, I see Jessica, Marianne. If you haven't checked out your speaker view, you can click speaker view or gallery, which allows us to see everybody at the same time, which is really nice when we're not talking about slides or sharing slides. So, hey, everybody, my name is Bart Baggett. I'm the founder of Handwriting University. I guess we've been doing this 20 something years, teaching people handwriting analysis. Today's class is, I think, the class 5 or 4 of what we call our certification level class. And so what we do is invite people that are in our certification program, our graduates, our alumni, to talk about some of the content of getting handwriting analysis correct. And so we've got some alumni here we're going to go to. We've got a lot of people in India. The time zone for the West Coast of America is pretty bad, like 7 a.m. For the rest of you in the world, you should say thank you very much for getting up so early. You're welcome very much. I see that Pooja is my co-host and she's here. Hello, Pooja.
Hi, how are you? Such nice to see you. So many people here in the class. I just love this community. Thank you all for being here. And I just heard Bart saying thank you for everyone who got up in the morning. Yeah, it's a pretty good time for Indians, but I can completely understand how it goes with everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
And Pooja, this was actually your idea. Now, obviously, because of the COVID-19, because people around the world are now using Zoom, we opened it up and we've let some guests come. So if you're new to our community, let me just be the first to welcome you. We love that you're here. If you have other schools, IGS, different schools, different backgrounds, or maybe this is your first time learning about psychology and personality, we do things a little different at Handwriting University. We combine NLP, we combine hypnosis and cognitive psychology because we're really all about personal transformation and about getting the accuracy of the analysis correct the first time. And then if you're in the healing arts, if anything, counseling, NLP, we want to help people change and transform. And that's why we're here. So we're going to dig in some handwriting samples. We are actually talking about fears and defenses this week as well as last week. If you didn't get a chance to watch the last 4 weeks, I think they're really nice classes and we go into some of the details and we do a lot of what we call trait stacking. Pooja, for those that are not certified, explain what trait stacking is and why it's so much more important because there's so much confusion. If you Google handwriting or you Google what does it mean on the internet, you're bound to get confused. If you get confused or you read something that's wrong, you give up and then you think it's a pseudoscience. So talk about what we do specifically and trait stacking and fears and defenses and what we're going to do today. While you do that, I'm going to look for a PowerPoint slide here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone quite knows me here, and especially from you. We all know Bart here. I just maybe missed if we have already introduced Bart. Did you introduce yourself? Because I
No,
just
I
love to.
did not introduce myself, but that's okay. They did it last week. They don't know who I am, but you go
I
ahead and give
know,
us your
but
intro.
yeah, I will definitely like to talk about Bart first and then get into what technology or what science you have got in our lives, especially mine that changed a lot of things in my life. So, Bart, the founder of Handwriting University, the platform where we are today, doing the class here and bringing all the communities together. Bart has been in this field since past. Bart, can I say the name of the years because that makes you feel old?
No, I'm 29. I've been doing this since I was 1.
Okay,
It's
so
my
since the
story and I'm
time,
sticking to it.
yeah, since the time he's 30, in fact, it's been 30 years he's been doing it. In fact, Kurt Baggett, his father, has also been doing it since such a long time, and I've learned so much from them. Bringing handwriting analysis as a science was something a very difficult and a tough task for you, I'm sure, Bart, because handwriting analysis and graphology has never been understood as a science. People thought, in fact, when I started getting into handwriting analysis, people used to come, bring their handwriting, and ask me, "Can you tell me my future?" That was something that I was very surprised. How do you feel that handwriting can tell you your future? Because it is something very scientific. It can tell you your personality because I am a core behavior analyst. And investigating behavior through handwriting, I can understand the complete science behind it. We just don't do future predicting. That's something that everyone has to understand. And but you took that load on you and made people understand that this is the science of understanding people. Bart has written so many books, and one of the Amazon bestsellers, Success Secret of Rich and Happy, I have it here, and I always recommend people having it. And he's been everywhere. I think 16,000 radio shows, you name it, and he's been there. In fact, you have been there in one of the radio shows in India, but I didn't know that. That's a news to me too. And he's been an actor, he is into Hollywood. That's something that is out of his passion. And when I got to know him, I realized that he can do this out of his passion because he's earning pretty good money out of whatever he's doing. So he can choose, okay, this is my passion, and I will also choose this to do. I want to do that. That risk taking also that comes, you can see how big a risk taker you are. You can see in your handwriting, and if you're not, you can add it in your handwriting. Calculative, good risk, high goals. So I think that completely contributes to you, Bad. I myself, Pooja Saran, I'm a hypnotherapist and an NLP practitioner. I got associated with Handwriting University because something I got to know that handwriting also is a tool of NLP. That was something very surprising to me. Changing neural pathways that a lot of people do in NLP, that is neuro linguistic programming, and switch patterns. Tony Robbins came up with switch pattern, Richard Bandler and John Grinder. They spoke about all these things, but then I realized even handwriting graphotherapy is changing neural pathways. It is a tool, big tool of neurolinguistic programming. So today we are also going to talk about graphotherapy. We just touch it a little. We won't really go into the details, but any students here who's working on the graphotherapy part is there in the last section. Please feel free to ask the questions. And any other questions, please write it on the chat box. Me or Bart, one of us will keep on checking on the chat box and try to give all the replies and all the questions if you have any. Thank you so much. And today let's start with our topic, Bart.
Where my microphone is unmuted. And Pooja, you need to speak into the microphone. The system didn't quite make you the spotlight
Okay.
when I talk at that. So the audio is a little bit, let's see if we can get, there we go.
Mhm.
All right, so we're back. So what we're talking about, this is really the certification program. I mean, we really have taken this 19 module online program, and we're taking people through some of the questions, from the answers. And so unlike a beginning introduction handwriting course, this is not it. If you're here as a guest, the 100, 101, those are great introductions. So don't be surprised if we talk a little bit over your head if you're a little bit new to this. But the topic for last week, which I think was a really good start, we threw in a little pop culture with the Tiger King, Carol Baskin, some other fun stuff, which I think is really interesting. And even today, maybe we'll do a little pop culture here and there just to get things rolling about what's interesting. But what we care about is when you look at somebody's handwriting, can you quickly establish their pain points? Can you establish why they're struggling? Can you quickly figure out the path that they've taken and the struggles they've had to come up to this point in their life when they're really, really happy, they're joyous, they're happily married, or they're on their second divorce, they're alcoholic, they're struggling, they can't keep a job. Like, you can look at that and figure out the handwriting, go, okay, what is their motivation? Why are they struggling? And more importantly, if you're a healer or a counselor, how can you help them? And that's really the question that we ask. When we created the fears and defenses section, you'll see a lot of handwriting books and handwriting courses that simply say, we're going to go through A through Z and talk about the handwriting stroke and what it means, which is a really great way to learn when you're starting. We published something called the Grapho Deck, 50 Traits. It's a wonderful starter kit to get an idea that there's a correlation between T-bars and self-esteem. There's a correlation between people's loops in their D and how sensitive criticism they are. So these are all really great foundation blocks so you can understand the language. So really good professional handwriting analysts have a language. The handwriting is the letters and the words, and we're able to assemble them in different ways to make bigger, more deeper concepts. And so if you're brand new to this, some of the phrases we may use, like temper or self-esteem or fear of success or guilt, in my mind, instantly I think, oh, guilt, I know what that looks like. Sarcasm, boom, instantly I know what that looks like in the handwriting. So without a working foundation of the fundamental primary traits, it's a little harder to keep up when you start putting together and stacking like a great artist does with different colors and everything. So that being said, what we're talking about today is fears and defenses. And we talked about the Tiger King last week, about ego, about sarcasm, about domineering, some of the things that, well, quite frankly, would make somebody annoying as hell and a great star to a TV show, both of which are wonderful things to talk about. You probably don't want to be married to that guy. And if you're that guy, you probably have an ex-wife that thinks you're a jackass. Okay, I get it. You know, we've had that point before. We've been domineering. We've been annoyed. We've been irritated. That's what we're talking about. So we're looking at some of those defense mechanisms specifically. I just thought I would start out with something kind of fun. And Tuj, I know you've got some slides to share. We're actually going to go into the course itself and show you some of the pages from the book, the textbook, and the quizzes. But there was an interesting handwriting sample that I published today on the Facebook page. And if you're not part of this Facebook page and you are an enrolled student from 101, 201, 3, please be part of this. This is our graduates. This is where we hang out. Everybody here has a similar philosophy. Nobody's bad-mouthing anybody. But we posted this article that was sent to me by a friend in the UK, and it has all of the royal family signatures. And Pooja, last week we got a lot of questions on signatures, and we tried to delay them because it's sort of a really narrow topic within the certification program. But what I found fascinating about Megan Singer, who's an American, by the way, she's American, who's married in the royal family, is she has something called guilt. And I think guilt is a defense mechanism. It's one of the 4 core emotions that hold people back. In fact, I got a text this morning from Rex Sykes. If you guys have read my book called The Magic Question, Rex was the creator of that idea through something called Direction Question when I was taking NLP with him 20 years ago. He has a new book out, and I'll be glad to promote it at some point. My point is that what they teach you in NLP and cognitive psychology and a lot of timeline therapy, they say, look, there's 4 major emotions that get us stuck. Anger, guilt, fear, sadness. Let me repeat that. Anger, guilt, fear, sadness. Those 4 emotions are what many therapists feel is the root cause of so much suffering in the world. And so if you can see any of these in the handwriting, it gives you an instant clue to what people are talking about, like instant clue to like where their struggles are. Are we still seeing that beautiful girl carrying it? So here's this interesting superstar, this rising star, this brand new royal family, and instantly in her handwriting, there's simple things we see. So Pooja, do a quick analysis and just make sure that we use some primary traits, and then focus on the idea of guilt and then how it moves into other areas. And then also I'll ask Derek to chime in on this when you're finished, Pooja.
Yeah, sure. Something that I really got amazed when I saw this was determination, the way the M has gone down. That's one of our primary traits. Another thing that surprised me, which was not maybe initially when I saw her signature, was fluidity of thought. If you see how the G and H is getting connected, that's fluidity of thought, and how beautifully she can express her feelings. I think it makes a lot of sense when she can actually convince other people to do what she feels is right. And it's not that it's correct or not correct, but what convincing people and expressing your views very easily, the thought process, it's a very good trait for any public speaker or someone who's into writing, someone who's into maybe counseling also. It makes a very good thought process, I think. But if I am correct, Sam Botha actually tried this pattern, and he actually could cure his uh, speaking and vocal problems when he met with an accident. One of our big testimonials, just by writing 8. There was this guy, a very famous guy, and he met with an accident. He lost his voice, and Bart suggested to write pattern 8 regularly. It took him time to write pattern 8. Again, it's one of our graphotherapies that we use, but it was very difficult. It seems very easy when you just right now do it, but for a dyslexic child, for an ADHD, or anyone who's having a problem, they will not be able to easily make it. It looks very easy, but it's very difficult for people who have problems and someone who's not really very fluid in terms of expressing. So
Yeah,
if we,
let
yeah,
me elaborate in case they didn't totally hear what you said, because you have a slight accent for those of us that have an
sure,
American ear.
sure.
A
Please
perfect
do.
accent, beautiful accent, by the way. But let me
I love
recap
you for that.
the figure 8 loop, which we saw in Megan's handwriting, is fluidity of thinking, and people often overlook that as just a great trait that radio hosts have or authors have. What Pooja said was inside the course, and by the way, this is unlocked. So even if you're not a paying member, you should be able to watch this video. If you go down to the fears and defenses in the graphotherapy section inside the course, and I'll put the course right here in the chat room so you guys don't have to do that. This is what people pay $2,000 for, is the inside of this course. But inside this, in fact, I'll let you, Pooja, put that in the chat room, is some of these things are unlocked. And so when you get down to the graphotherapy, there's a section about how someone with a brain injury regained their speech and was able to regain from having no ability to speak to taking their hand and making a figure-8 stroke, and 25 days later having the brain start kickstarting. It's an incredible, incredible story. He was at the conference. He sat and talked with me for 30 minutes about his injury. He's a top voiceover artist. But if you have time and it interests you, go ahead and watch this video. Again, I know it's unlocked because I kept it unlocked because I just think it's so important that people understand the power of this idea of fluidity and how it actually can change the brain. Now, years ago, one of our a friend / competitor, Erica Caros, lovely woman. I think she's still teaching. She must be a little bit older. German, big thick German accent, so she doesn't have a lot of audios and videos. But she actually was a proponent that if you change this trait in your writing, you would become a better golfer. Your golf score would decrease. And I'm like, how the hell? That sounds so wacky. That's the most craziest offer I've ever thought. And then actually, as I began to watch, as people would make this in their handwriting, they became better speakers. They'd be better connected. I know I have been on 1,500, 1,600 radio interviews. I've met Ryan Seacrest, and I've met Howard Stern, and I've met Larry King, and all these great people. They all have this in common. This is the one trait that if you feel like you want to be a speaker, a TED Talk, you better master this, because without fluidity of thinking, you won't be able to navigate even a simple thing, what we're doing now. I think Zoom calls are simple, but I've done thousands of radio shows, so this feels very similar to me. You're watching your peers struggle right now because everybody in the world during COVID-19 is doing Zoom seminars, and most of them suck at it. They can't work the knobs. They can't do this. They can't connect with people. They can't reach out and say hi. They don't know how to manage all this information at once. And it's because they don't have this trait as well as the experience to do so. So I know I got off on a tangent there, but I thought that was an interesting way to transition from that. But what we didn't talk about, Pooja, and let me go to Derek and see if, Derek, you can unmute yourself and chat. And I'm so glad you're here, by the way. I really missed you as part of the community. Derek Watson's one of our graduates from way back early 2000, also one of our faculty members, and you have one of the most interesting and wonderful spins on relationships. And we filmed it years ago. It's inside the course. You're probably a star to a lot of people on this phone call that have seen that. But can you talk about guilt and those 4 major fears that people struggle with, and give us a little insight from your perspective?
Great. I guess I hope everyone can hear me this morning. It's early for me, so I'm glad to be here. Nice to see you again, Pooja. Well, anger, sadness, guilt. Let's start with the guilt in the handwriting. That's that long stroke on the end that goes out to my right or your left if it's facing you, and goes backward. Guilt in respects to people who are looking to build, let's say, relationship, looking, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, is something that can really, really hold you back. She appears to have a tremendous amount of guilt, It's going so far back that it's almost in the middle of the line. Now, the question is, what we will never know unless we speak to her, is what is she feeling guilty about? We could all assume that it could be marriage. We could assume it has to be family, but that's the part where counseling comes into play. And if you take a look also at the line at the top of the second hump in the M that goes all the way back, that is also guilt. Where you see a stroke is the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's in the M or it's in the back. And that's a tremendous amount of guilt that she's suffering from. Now, the question is that guilt stopping her from becoming who she is? Now, couple that with sadness and anger, that would tell me that she's going back and forth with the 2, with the 3 maybe. Angry about not wanting a life that everyone says she wants, because I believe she's married to the prince in Britain, if I'm correct.
One of the princes of something over there.
Yeah. So that would be a very interesting conversation that I would like to have with her from a relationship standpoint, to see if she's even aware of that on a conscious level. Because this, to me, her handwriting says that this guilt she's feeling is very unconscious, and she's probably suppressing it.
And Derek, I've also read and this is not a primary trait, but I think it's fair to bring in other theologies in this, is a lot of times when people put umbrellas over their signature, it's a symbol of a fear. And so they're protecting themselves at some level. What I'd like to know is, did Megan write like this way before the whole royal family thing? Or did this show up when she was now a paparazzi magnet? Because people's handwriting changes with their environment. If you're depressed, you'll write that. If you're physically molested, the next day, you're going to have a little bit of different handwriting. It's going to slant backwards. Your Y is going to be. So people can have instantaneous change, which, Derek, I'd like you to talk about. We know that if we have trauma, let's take the worst case scenario, car accident, rape, molestation, instant trauma. Obviously, our physiological changes, and then, PTS, right? But could it work the other way, Derek? Could you have instant or short-term powerful emotions that change you for the better?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It works both ways. It's like what you said in the fluidity of thinking. That stroke is in my handwriting. The funny thing about the stroke, the fluidity of thinking stroke, that was always in my handwriting. I didn't realize what it was until I actually took my first class with you many years ago.
Then you realize you were a genius. I get it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I like to think that I am. But absolutely, that stroke could pop up any time. And the question is, it could operate for you. And that's why it's so important, I think, for people to really get away from their phones and that typing and get back into writing, because they don't realize how much they could change themselves and their personality moving towards the future with just a couple of changes in that stroke and practicing them from 21 to 30 days. How important that change could possibly be in changing the direction of their focus. Because this is about focus, and a fear is a focus. And as long as you focus on it, as long as you focus on anything, the stronger that focus becomes, or that fear becomes. So my point to that is, if she's had this fear for a long, long time, it is something that she focuses on a lot. But that's something, once again, that I'd like to know if I spoke with her. Because again, we don't know when it started, but again, it's something that she can change automatically. It's not something that has to stay with her or anyone in that situation.
You're saying that you can change your life just by your changing your brain? That's powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Where have we heard that before, right?
Exactly. Where have we heard that before?
Given the nature of Megan and her history, family history, I would say she probably had that regressive stroke early in life. We know there's rather traumatic family background. There's lots of drama that's gone on, with her and her dad and other family members. So I wouldn't be surprised, because she broke away, became very independent early in life, before she even started on TV. So the regressive stroke, I think, is probably deeply rooted in the past.
Yeah, and sometimes we think if somebody's famous or beautiful, they don't have any problems. But if you look at their handwriting, you realize sometimes they have very similar problems. Obviously, you have things like fluidity. She jumped from not being famous to being a recognizable TV supporting cast member to being royal family, which is a path most people never take. But you got to give her credit. She's intelligent. She's expressive. She's got fluidity. A lot of good things there. I think what we're saying is, in that simple handwriting, it opened the conversation of guilt and shame and things in the past that she's embarrassed of. And again, we don't know personally what that is, but most of the people that you analyze, you have no backstory. Brian and I are speculating because we don't know her personally, but we're speculating based on news articles. The rest of humanity, we have no idea because they're not famous. So when you see that, what I always ask, and what's really changed me from more of an entertainer / a very good handwriting analyst that got attention and to a better therapist, was what had to happen for this stroke to show up in their handwriting. So it's a great way. It's kind of like the magic question. If you ask the right question, the handwriting will teach you, assuming you have the fundamentals. But what had to happen for this person to have, why is this trait here? Why does she need this? What about their unconscious mind says, wow, I need to be extra sensitive. I need to be extra guilty. I need to feel this, and not necessarily need, not like somebody chooses it, but it's reoccurring. And normally it's a defense mechanism. And Pooja, explain what a defense mechanism is in psychology generally. And then specifically, we grouped 5 or 10 handwriting traits as defense mechanisms, because if you master these, you'll be really, really insightful. You also might really piss anybody off if you don't have diplomacy, because you're basically saying, here's the worst 7 parts of your personality. Aren't I great? Is handwriting fun? You're a mess. You're a total mess. Now go on to the next person. Yeah, so explain that, because it's one of those things that, yeah, it's a lot of power, but you better have some empathy when you start doing that. Pooja, see if we can get you.
Yeah, so I hope I'm clear now. I've changed the space. Maybe the network was not clear. Defense mechanism, there is another word that I really like when I counsel and when I do the therapy, coping mechanism. What is your coping mechanism? First time when you were truthful and when you were honest, when you were maybe 6 or 7 and you broke a cookie jar, and you were honest to your mom, and your mom actually scolded you or grounded you. Next time, to save yourself from the grounding or that scolding, what is the coping mechanism that you developed? Either you lied, you said, you just hid away the truth, you didn't say, you said, I didn't do that, or maybe you blamed it on someone else. This person has, I don't know, I don't have any clue, I was not there. Or maybe you shouted back, temper, or it is something that, okay, I'm irritated now, you don't talk to me. It is just the coping mechanism that you develop to save yourself from some life-threatening thing at your childhood. In the childhood, maybe before you were 8, till the time your brain actually develops a critical filter, gives you an understanding that you are more, and now you're more capable, you can develop more skills, and you don't even have to lie, you can be honest, it's okay, and you can reply back to your mom. But all these defense mechanisms are made at a very young age to save yourself from something that a child feels that's a very life-threatening thing. Like if I ground a young child of 2-year or 3-year-old just for breaking a cookie jar, in the room, he's feeling threatened. It's a life-threatening thing for him. So he developed a coping mechanism not to go through that again. He either lied or he threw tantrums. So these are the coping mechanisms that a personality develops to save yourself at that time when you were small. Not now, but sadly, because our subconscious mind are very clearly programmed and we keep on asking ourselves the same questions. We keep on getting the same results. You still are not able to understand why are you always defending yourself? Why are you always, before even the cookie jar breaks, you're ready to give an explanation, or you're feeling guilty. As Bart said, there are four emotions. Either you're feeling angry, you're feeling guilty, or you're trying to save yourself. How are you trying to save yourself before even anything goes wrong? Or if anything goes wrong, how do you save yourself? That is something called as a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism. In our handwriting analysis, we see the defense mechanisms. We see this was the coping mechanism. But what kind of threat was it? Was it the guilt? Was it sadness? Was it the anger? What kind of threat was it that you developed this coping mechanism? And everyone can develop different kind of coping mechanism. I was very low in self-esteem as a child. If my mother will hit me or scold me for breaking a cookie jar, next time I will lie. But another child who's a boy, or maybe who is more temperamental, he will throw tantrums. He might hit back the mother. So what situation you were there at that time, that depends on what kind of coping mechanism you develop. So we need to find out what was the fear behind this coping mechanism. It's so clearly explained in the whole course. We have defense mechanisms, but we don't change it. We work on the fears first. A good handwriting analyst, a good therapist will work on the fears first, empower the person, give them the right questions to ask. As Tony Robbins says, your life depends, the quality of your life depends on the quality of questions you ask. Again, as magic questions have always empowered me and people in the community, ask the right questions, give them all those therapies, and then see, the defense mechanism will automatically go. Now you don't want to lie, because when you lie now, no one is there to hit you or scold you. You have your whole cookie jar. You can break as many as you want. So this is what the whole gist of defense mechanism and coping mechanism is about.
Pooja, let me interrupt there. Nicely job, by the way. When you said changing like an O, specifically, let's talk about some of these traits, which I consider like some of the really big red flag defense mechanisms. The sensitive to criticism, which I would say 25% of people on this call probably have this. So we need to be diplomatic. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. In fact, a lot of people will argue that the loop in the D&T makes them great, makes them sensitive, makes them great salespeople. I don't want to change that. I'm a sensitive person. That's why people love me. Yeah, it's exactly why people love you, because you go on your way because you want to be approved. The challenge with that is if you're always wanting approval, and I say you, let's take somebody else. If the person, your child or your boss is always wanting approval, and then they desperately need it. It's almost like, and we're looking at the screen here with the big loop on the D, and this is a big loop. Well, I know we have tiny loops sometimes, but it works the same way. So imagine that you're in the Game of Thrones. You've got a little huge slice on your arm because you were just in battle, right? And you've got to protect that wound. And so any salt, anyone hits it, anyone bumps into you, you've got a huge slice on your arm. What is your defense mechanism? Are you going to say, thank you, that salt felt great. Would you throw some more salt in my wound? No, you're going to be like, motherfucker, what the hell did you do? Like, you would go crazy because it hurts so bad because you're walking around with an open sore, okay? However, if someone says, oh my God, you're hurt, baby, let me protect you, let me put some salve on it. Oh my God, they must love me because they see I have an open wound and they're helping me. Okay, if anyone has a D as big as this, they've got an open wound in their brain that they desperately need your approval. And when people desperately need their approval, they're going to do two things. They're going to be exceptionally nice, or they're going to be exceptionally ratty. Let me translate that. They're going to be exceptionally rude or mean or defensive, right? Because it's an open wound. They can't control it. It's a instant defense mechanism, right? So this is one of those traits which when I was younger, Dr. Walker said, let me tell you something, faggot. You got to avoid these people. I said, yeah, but they're some of the nicest people I've ever met. He said, they'll always stab you in the back. I said, no, that can't be true. Always? Fine, you figure it out. And you know what? I have gone into business with people thinking, you know what? They've gone through Tony Robbins, they've gone through NLP, they must have evolved past this because they're so sweet. Derek, they've always stabbed me in the back if they have this big trait. Explain to me if that's been your experience. You've been doing this 20 years. Is it fair to say some of these traits are simply red flags and we should walk away?
Well, that's funny that you said that, because when I started studying this 20 years ago, thanks a lot, Bart, for making that known. That's one of the things that I saw, because when I was doing handwriting analysis, and we were talking about it many years ago, I wanted to pay attention to this one because this is that loop and that D I saw a lot prior to learning handwriting analysis. So your point is absolutely correct. And those people are so sensitive that they get angry sometimes, not to the point of violence, but to the point where you can't even tolerate them. And here's the other part. You never knew they were that way because you took it for so long. And once I started learning handwriting analysis, I said, oh, that's what that is. It's not just me wondering, oh, maybe I'm just over exaggerating this. This person has been hurt, and they've been hurt so badly and wounded so badly that they haven't taken the time to heal themselves. Now, again, my background is in therapy, and depending on who the person was, I took some time to get deeper into it. If that wound wasn't so deeply embedded, because some people are so hurt that they tend to deny it and put it off as nothing. And that could be based upon who they're talking to, or based upon talking to me, are based upon the fact that, hey, sometimes holding on to these things make you who you are. And the moment that you give them up, that's a sign that change is on the horizon. And a lot of people don't want to change. So when you're wounded at the level of these D's, and you've been operating this way for such a long time, it is very, very hard to change, because looking down the road, some people want to know what's on the other side of that fence. And they want, if there's a hole in the fence, they'd be glad to peek through. And some people aren't willing to take a chance that if I change my feelings about this particular issue, I become a better person, because they've been operating this way for such a long time.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Paula, I'd love to hear your opinion. Paula's also one of our graduates, super bilingual, does a lot of coaching in the Spanish and Italian students around the world. Paula, please give us your insight.
I want to compare this one, the stroke for which became that one, actually, because these three, like guilt, paranoia, and sensitive to criticism, they have a characteristic that is similar. What we learn in at the beginning of handwriting analysis is that the direction of the strokes has a meaning. And for people who does not know, like an example, the upper zone, or the top part of the handwriting, is what is considered the upper zone. The bottom part is the lower zone, right side and then left side of the handwriting. And this stroke, what it does, it goes kind of like forward, right? What it means, moving forward in your direction, which is the right side, is moving to the future or toward others. But what the strokes does is moving forward and then start going up to the thinking area, to the philosophies, like their ideas, their values, their thoughts, like thinking and going back, which is the stroke that Megan shows. And nobody pointed here out, but there is an important thing that we have to consider is, yes, that stroke affected her life. Why? Because it's the first time in royalty that actually, I don't know if people know, they moved to Canada. I mean, the couple, her and her husband, which is the prince, they moved to Canada. And one of the reasons why, because he wants to protect her. So that's a major and important thing to consider. Like, what happened is she goes like, she's trying to move forward, go and think, wow, I want to remember. I mean, I start remembering things, and then she goes totally back to the past and stays there. That's why guilt, like that stroke, stays there and don't go, no move forward again. So Paula, what happens is a lot of,
just one distinction. We talked about this overarching backward stroke as guilt. And the other slide said the really, really big looped D is guilt. So I just want to specify, because it's the same word in English, and it's really a different sort of meaning. One's going into the past and analyzing it and just feeling emotions. The big D, in fact, I think that Dr. Walker called it guilt. It's probably more paranoid and blame. Exactly. And those people may not have much guilt at all, because guilt requires some level of self-awareness that you have done something bad. This guy on the screen right here, he has no self-awareness. I mean, this is the Tiger King, the cult leader, the guy that just goes off the rails when he doesn't get his way. And I'm not sure there's much guilt. So I probably, if I had to re-edit this book for a fourth time, Paula, I might change that to guilt complex or paranoid delusion. Would you agree with me?
Yes. I mean, actually, like, we cannot say paranoia, because paranoia is actually a term that psychologists use. But there is some sort of like, the bigger the loop, the more imagination there is there. And of course, the more imagination, there is more room to be out of reality. Okay?
Absolutely, absolutely. The way Bart said, the bigger the loop, the wound is very big. And of course, it is more sensitive. And when we talk about, but I would just like to give one example here before ending this topic here. is when you talk about sensitivity to criticism, it's basically an approval that you are desiring. You're desiring approval from outside yourself. So the only one thing I always suggest before giving the graphotherapy, these people are those who look into the mirror in the morning and they cannot see any reason to approve of themselves. Rather, they will not say that I look good because I feel good. Those actresses are people who do a lot of Insta stories and selfies. Not everyone, maybe a couple of them. They actually want the approval, the likes, to look at themselves in the mirror. Okay, morning when I posted this picture, this person liked me. This person said I look good in this hair. So they need someone else to approve of themselves when they see themselves in the mirror. So the whole idea is to remove that loop, is that you should not be needing anyone else's approval. Look into the mirror in the morning and approve of yourself. That's where we are coming down to the whole point, that desire for approval. Why do you want to depend on anyone else on that?
So Pooja, I'm going to throw a wrench into this whole conversation here, and I want to attempt to do it without being political. Just think about the personality. We think that sensitive criticism is an insecurity. It's a fear, right? However, you can have people with an incredibly good self-esteem and have this insecurity. And the good thing about handwriting analysis, the way we teach it, is we break these apart, individual strokes. And so if you go back to last week and the week before that on these calls, and the replays are up, ego, which is I'm my space, my boundaries, the guy who walks in the room, the girl who walks in the room and knows everybody, there's an ego there. That's a very healthy thing, social intelligence. Then you've got goals, meaning, do I have the ability to get what I want? That's the height of the T-bar. Then you've got the underline of the name. That's a second leadership quality, which says not only do I think I can do it, I think I should be put in charge. Okay. That same guy could also have the loop of the D that we're dealing with. Now you've got a maniacal, charming leader, you know, Kool-Aid in the village sort of craziness. And you can't argue there's a great self-esteem, but also massive insecurity. If you talk about the Tiger King, Joe Exotic, who's now in prison, and if you haven't watched the TV show, you may be missing this, but there's no doubt that he had a sense of confidence and power and need to be in the spotlight and charm, a lot of traits that you would really, really like, but he was riddled with insecurity. Take the President of the United States. There's no lack of confidence. You may hate him for so many reasons, but what you said, Pooja, is interesting because he doesn't have loops in his D's. But it would be hard to argue that he wasn't one of the more insecure, needing approval type of people with lots of, so again, politics aside, but just look at his behavior. I was watching Pierce Morgan, you know, he used to host CNN after Larry King left. And he said, look, Donald Trump's a friend of mine. He's been a friend for years. But the way he's behaving himself of spending this time in this crisis, talking about his polls, telling people how great he is, anyone who has to constantly tell you how great he is insecure about being perceived as great. But I want to point this out because it's so simple. And this is why we have the certification course. This is why we go through testing to get confused between sensitive to criticism and vanity. In handwriting, they're totally different. And last week we talked about vanity. Vanity will also make somebody look like a child, an immature child needing validation, but they don't need it from you, Pooja. They need it from everybody.
Absolutely.
So this person, okay, let me just give the distinction. I'll bring it down to reality. Pooja, if your husband was Donald Trump or this guy, I know, sorry about that. You really have two bad choices there.
Okay. This guy.
You want this guy. No, dude, leave politics out of this. Donald Trump has done some really interesting things, and at least he's provided a lot of comic relief for everybody. Which one would care if you complimented their tie?
I'm sure Donald Trump won't care. It's him he will care. Donald Trump needs it for everyone.
Because he wants your approval. He needs you to love him. right? He needs you to say he's the greatest husband ever. The guy with vanity, he doesn't really care as much what you or Brian or Marianne compliments him. He cares about this delusional thing called status.
Yes.
And people respect me. I need to be in the magazines, all right? This is a very interesting distinction. And so as you get to know these personality traits, there is not only correct vocabulary words, but there's really a deep understanding of how people behave. Because I think as you were describing it, and Paula too, I was like, wow, that's kind of similar to vanity. That's kind of similar to low self-esteem. But if you nail the wrong cause, which is you can't, without handwriting, you're going to make a mistake. Like it's so cool in handwriting because it's so separate. Like it's very distinctive traits and we've really carved them out. Now, sure, you could have somebody with all of them, but what's so great about it is we know that the issue with this guy on the screen of having guilt or sensitive criticism, that's a pretty easy fix. If we can get a little bit of self-esteem in there, which is T-bars, with and remove the scar, get the wound healed. And maybe you can talk about that, Pooja. How would you get that wound healed if you were not a Handwriting University graduate, if you didn't know that graphotherapy was effective? Because it's a hard concept to sell. I know it sounds like horseshit. I'm not dumb. I had this problem since I was 15 years old. People thought I was insane. Now Sam Bada can talk. Apparently, I'm not that insane to some people. I get it. It sounds a little out there. And if you are psychological trained, if you're a hypnotist, if you do cognitive psychology, you know, anything but taking a pill, I think is a very interesting way to heal somebody.
Absolutely. So when
So
we
how
go
would
back,
you address? Here's my question. You can have the stage. You have this person that's really sensitive to criticism. He's done great in sales. A lot of people like him, but he's constantly in pain because he feels everybody is always talking behind his back. How would you approach that if you didn't know graphotherapy? Because you're trained in 4 or 5 modalities.
Yes. So we will talk about the first time when he actually felt that. It always goes back to the first time, the emotion in the first time, and how did he cover it up? What was the coping mechanism that time? And then going back, as all the hypnotherapists here in the class, I'm sure there are a lot of them, because that is one handwriting analysis is something that a lot of hypnotherapists use now to understand the core behaviors, and it always helps to change too. Graphotherapy works wonders. So if you're just a hypnotherapist, you will definitely go back and talk about the first time, what happened, the second time and third time, and meanwhile empowering them that they don't need this kind of defense mechanism of reverting back. Again, this is the fear. We need to find out what is the coping mechanism that had came. Maybe he showed temper, maybe he lied, or maybe he just put his self-esteem was suddenly became very low, and empowering them all this while curing the whole scene that this is not you now. It was an 8-year-old boy, it was a 6-year-old boy, or maybe a 4-year girl, which you didn't have any other options to deal with. All you could do is lie, all you could do is throw tantrums, all you could do is hide. That's it. So we need to go back, and NLP has got a lot of tools with that. I will always go with graphotherapy side by side with whatever tools you do. That works wonder. It works wonder with the kids before the belief system becomes very, very strong. So this is what I would have definitely done, and I'm sure all the hypnotists here will definitely agree with me here.
Well, let's ask one. Derek is not only a trained therapist, but Derek, you've done some great stage work, which is always mystifies me because it's both magical, it's both entertaining, but at the root of it is this therapeutic process that I think we would use individually.
Mm-hmm.
How would you help somebody with a low self-esteem or sensitive criticism if you didn't have handwriting, which I know is a limitation? So remember, those of you who hadn't mastered it, you're already tied because you don't have this ability. So I know it's a weird question, but would you use hypnotherapy? Would you go back to the root cause? Would you find the first time that they, you know, had the dream of them showing up to school in their underwear and being laughed at? Like, how would you approach this?
It's funny because little brief hypnotherapy is very similar to handwriting because you need a level of confidence to perform them both. So hypnotherapy is nothing but focus, concentration, and letting go and releasing yourself of whatever emotion that you're holding on to at the point where hypnosis takes place. So people go into hypnosis. In regards to self-esteem though, I believe that people have self-esteem no matter what. They may be not applying it in that particular area. For example, driving your car was very difficult when you first started doing it. But after practicing for several times, many different times, your confidence got better because you knew how to do it. That same level of confidence, that same level of time that you took to build self-esteem or confidence to drive your car can be transformed into another area that you're suffering from. So let's say the person has low self-esteem about, I don't know, boxing or wrestling or, you know, anything physical like that. If they practice it, it's the not knowing that provides the low self-esteem, the know-how, not knowing how to do something. Once a person practices it and gets over that hill in their mind and in their heart, well, this is too hard, the self-esteem grows. So I always like to say that everyone has self-esteem, whether it's high or low. The low part of that self-esteem to me is not knowing how to do something or accomplish something. So in hypnosis, for example, if someone had low self-esteem, all I would simply do is find something within them that they do well, ask them how they did that, who, what, when, where they were, not why, because why is always brings up a problem. So when you ask somebody why they did something, the first thing they do in their brain is they think about why, you know, this happened, and that normally creates the problem. So I stay away from that word as much as possible. So without handwriting analysis, raising someone's self-esteem, all requires you to do is to find out what they're good at and take those skills and transform it into things that they don't do well. That's how I would do it. It makes it simpler. It happens faster.
I love that answer. Here's a distinction that I've been using in the last 5 years, Derek, and tell me if you agree with it. Everything you said is correct. The only distinction is you said, if I find someone that believes they have a low self-esteem in a context, I would change that word to confidence in that context. Okay. And here's the distinction that I made, and tell me if you agree with this. And again, we've been studying this for a while. Self-esteem is the cumulative belief system in your own worth. So am I worthy of getting that outcome? Am I worth it? That's the self-esteem. Self-confidence is, I don't know how to do this thing. And I'll give you an example. I have been taking guitar for a couple of years now. My self-confidence with guitar is still really low. And I think I'm a pretty worthy person. And honestly, Derek, sometimes I don't believe I'm ever going to get it. It's really been really difficult for me. Now, is that a self-esteem thing or is that a self-confidence thing? I would argue it's a self-confidence thing in the context of that thing. Now, I have insecurities playing guitar in front of groups, but you know what? Put me on CNN and I'm a rock star. Well, that makes no sense, right? It's because confidence is contextual. So by the way, everything you said I love. I would just swap out that one little vocabulary word only because I've been redefining it. And by the way, this is not, and Derek graduated 20 years ago, this is kind of what I do. We redefine words constantly to find better ways to express the subtleties of basically what is not tangible, personality. If you guys, and I don't know if you've read this, Derek, but there's a new article that came out a couple of years ago about redefining the trait of stinger. And if you haven't read it, and those of you that are been lost for a while, I think it's called I Love You Like a Slot Machine. And you read that and you're like, holy Christ, now it makes all, like it was always a great trait. It was like it always 90% correct. But there was this little element of like, I wonder why that's not totally correct. And in that trait, which is not fears and offenses, we'll go into it next week. It was about, I met a woman who was a woman. She had two female parents. One was masculine, one was feminine. And so now that trait made no sense because there was no father image. She had two lesbian parents, but one was masculine, one was feminine. And that conversation made me go down a rabbit hole of how to redefine this word or this trait, which, by the way, I don't think the stinger trait is in any other graphology course in the world. If it is, they definitely stole it from Dr. Walker because that man had some women issues, and he earned that, honestly. He figured that out on his own. That's damn sure. You can thank him and Jane. I think his girlfriend's still alive. I'd love to get her on one of these calls. All right, let's wrap up the top of the hour. Pooja, if you are taking this class and you have coached many people to graduation, if they were doing chapter, this is just the self-test. This isn't the final exam. This is the self-test, okay? So what unique about the indicates guilt? And the answer is to draw it. And so this is chapter 12 loop. So you could do, the answers could be two things. You could do the Megan Markle thing, which is the encompassing canopy, or you could draw a loop in the D. Now, here's the thing. Let's do a quiz here, and you're welcome to unmute yourself or answer in the chat box. This is a small loop. This is kind of an average loop, and this is a big loop with the flat top. Is the answer A, B, or D for guilt?
D.
D is correct because it has a flat top and it's just malformed. It means their perception of reality is a little bit warped. So, sense of criticism, fear of what? Wait, oh, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna pick somebody randomly and they're gonna hate me because I'm gonna put them on and they don't know they're getting on. And this is the best part of it.
You love it.
Right. Marion Dotery, sensitive criticism comes from a fear of what?
Disapproval.
A fear of approval?
Disapproval.
Fear of disapproval. I think that's correct.
Yes.
There's also, that's a very fine line because fear of ridicule, which is the humps, also comes from a fear of disapproval. So it's almost perfect. Yeah. It's kind of a self, it's kind of an obvious answer. It's a fear of being criticized, which is essentially disapproval, right? But I have a fear of somebody attacking me versus rejection. So no, I think Marion gets an A+ on that because I think it's the right answer. If you had self-consciousness, the answer would be, I'm afraid of someone rejecting me. I knock on the door and they say, no, I don't want your encyclopedia. That's a fear of rejection, which is a call reluctance, which of course is impossible to see in sales. In fact, Megan Markle had that a little bit in her M's, which is a fear of what people might think they'll reject me. So Marianne, you get an A on that. Let's go to Sandy Wilcox. Sandy, are you in the program, or is this the first time you're seeing the inside of the certification program?
I just got in for the first time with you guys here, but I brought this in to show you a long time ago, 2009. I came to Las Vegas and got certified with you guys and kind of dropped off for a while. Just a quick question before we run out of time. On Megan Markle's, I got in late because I didn't know how to do this Zoom and stuff. But I was wondering if her handwriting signature was the same as her handwriting. Did you guys have a sample of her handwriting? Is it the same?
That's a pretty good question. I'll give you the 60-second answer. In everybody's celebrity's handwriting, their handwriting is more authentic, and it's who that you would be hanging out with at your castle. And the signature is going to be a little bit more your professional image. So yes, you will get a few different traits. They're not inaccurate, but they have to do with the public image. So no, we didn't get a deep dive into her handwriting, and I just literally just the article posted yesterday. So when you're learning and you're already certified, it is definitely better to have this handwriting, and the signatures create a lot of limitations, which is very, very frustrating. And let me also tell you, Sandy.
Oh, I just gonna say, quick thought was looking at it, it looked like she is protecting herself. To me, it looked like protecting herself, not so much as guilt, but unless we saw her the rest of her handwriting, that's what it just looked like to me, you know?
No, I agree with you. I think those overwhelming, again, I think you came in a little bit late. There was two distinguishing meanings within the graphology world. One is self-protection, one is guilt. And so a lot of people that have trauma, they blame themselves and they need to be protected. You know, it's kind of like a survivor. Oh, it's my fault. It wasn't really your fault. You were 7. Yeah, I feel guilty of it. So the relationship are connected. Let me also tell you, Sandy, if you haven't seen the inside of this course, all of our alumni are welcome. I think there's $100 fee or something to upgrade. But if you want to go back through this, we took all that stuff from the 1995, 2005. We took the best seminars, and they're all inside the course in both the textbook and video stuff. So we're glad you're back. We would love you to engage. We have other programs for graduates. We have the 501. We have our mastermind. Just contact one of our customer support. In fact, if you look at the chat room, I put our USA customer support there.
Okay.
Brianna works there, and Dave, and then Pooja handles a lot of our inquiries in India. I know the time zone's kind of weird because this class, we have a lot of Indian students that this is a good time for. Also, the internet was really bad the first few weeks we tried these, and we couldn't do it in normal time period. We had to come back. So yeah, we've got a lot of alumni. I'm glad you're here. This class will go on for at least 4 more weeks, Sandy. So break out your books. See if you can get access to the course, and you'll keep up. But it's so good to get a refresher. Not only do we change our teaching method a little bit, we add traits. We usually don't delete them. They've already been pretty curated. We've got about 100 traits in the primary dictionary, maybe 50 more in the 501 advanced dictionary. But you'll look at graphology size, and you'll see 700 traits, and 600 of those are bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't make sense, and then you sound like an astrologer, and then you sound like a palm reader, and by the way, they're great to have at a party, and I've had plenty of girlfriends that want to read my chart. I'm not saying that they're wrong. That's not what we do here. We're doing our best to be scientific, to be predictable, to help with the HR community and the psychologists and stuff. That's kind of what we're up to. All right, 2 more questions, and then we'll resume next week, and I'm really glad you're here. Yeah, so Sandy, I'm so glad you're here. I picked on you randomly. I didn't realize that you're a graduate. I'm really pleased to see you. Marcia, let's see if we can answer this next question. Sensitivity is displayed by a lack of loops in the D's and T's. True or false?
Oh, that's false. It's a great deal of imagination and sensitivity. The wider the loop, the larger the amount of sensitivity you have and imagination to create more sensitivity. So, yeah, that's false.
Hey, you're good. Are you certified? Because I think you should be.
I agree with that.
I started with IGAS back in the 80s, and I didn't finish because of family issues, but I really want a certification somewhere, and I'm pretty sure this is where I want it from. But I have so much experience, I was wondering if,
Well, so we blended IJS's material. My teacher went through IJS, so that you'll recognize the slant. We added graphotherapy, which they never did. We added cognitive psychology, and I have a relief frame from NLP. So I think what you'll find is you'll recognize all the basic traits, and then as you stack them together, you're like, holy, I never thought about that. Yes, absolutely. Reach out to Pooja. We offered a discount last week for $500. I told you it ended. I would sure love to extend it to you if you guys are interested in getting that. I know that COVID-19, some of you have a little financial struggles. Look in the chat room. I'm not going to do a sales pitch. I want you guys to come in. If there's any way we can, if that would assist you in making that decision, reach out to Pooja or Brianne, and we'll get you those secret links. And likewise, and those of you that graduated, like I said, you can come back and we can get you access to this course. But there's also something called the 501 course. It's not online. We only had maybe 20, 25 students go through that master level course, kind of like IGS did. IGS was mostly photocopies of other people's courses, though, if I remember. So we've got a course on that, and you have to ship to your home. But again, if anybody wants that, just look at the chat room, support at Handwriting University. We'd love to have you. We really want you to learn more. And like I said, handwriting is always growing, meaning that psychology, we're always learning. So even though you learned the fundamentals back years ago, but those who don't know, IGS was by far the preeminent place in the world to learn. Both of my mentors went through their courses. Phyllis Madigan was the top salesperson. I remember Phyllis. You probably recognize her name. I don't know. Anyway, she passed away at like 82, but she was just wonderful. She started my doc exam and my handwriting career when I was out at Pepperdine in Malibu. And I said, Phyllis, you're doing all these great speeches. And she would by the way, she would buy my deck of cards. It's a true story. Buy my deck of cards. And then she would take out all the cards with my phone number because she was afraid IGS would fire her if they knew I was selling someone else's course, because they were like a little dictatorship. Like there was no sense of community there. And I said, the other thing, Phyllis, I said, why don't you begin? I mean, she spoke. I met Barbara Boxer, which is a senator from New York, with her. Senator from California was speaking with her when I was 19, 20 years old. I said, you got all this audience, you're talking about self-esteem, you empower people. Why don't you just tell them to raise the T-bar? She said, but in IJS, they don't let us do graphotherapy. I said, you live in America, Phyllis. You can't just tell people to raise their T-bar. I don't want to get kicked out because they give me a royalty check every month.
Wow.
So that's, by the way, You know what? I'm not. It's kind of like an MLM. Like if there's a marketing, I get it. It's a company, but we don't do things that way. If you want to join us, we'd love to have you. We do squash bullshit ideas. So if you bring in something that's crazy, we'll say, hey, can you not bring that on the class because we've researched that. If we don't know if it's true, we'll tell you if you just don't know. But you met Derek and Pooja, and there's a lot of smart people like Paula on this phone, and they keep us all in line. If there's people teaching stuff that's out of line, we do. We especially had that problem with a foreign, with a lot of people in Indian other countries, and they have all these mixed languages. So we want you to teach what we've proven, and a lot of that was from Milton Bunker, but a lot of that's from Ray Walker and some other brilliant people. All right, glad to talk to you. I'm randomly picking people, and you all are beautiful and amazing. I wish we could spend more time, but we can. We're going to do this class at least 3 more weeks. Pooja, we originally slated this for 8 weeks. We thought COVID would be over in 2 and we'd be done back to our life, because days of our lives come on any day. I got to get back to my television show. By the way, I'm kidding. That's my mom's show. Pooja, we're got at least 2 more weeks of this. And again, we're going through the course. So we're going to open up the course. Those of you that are in the course, open up your textbooks and ask questions. The only reason this has got 85 people in it compared to 13 is because we just said, hey, the world's at home right now. Maybe we can entertain you, and I'm glad that you're here and we can reconnect with our alumni. But normally this would be the class that you can take to finish your certification, to ask your questions. We only had this class every 3 years or so because it's kind of a free bonus. However, you had to be in the certification course, which means you had to spend $2,000 to $3,000 just to be here. So I'm really glad that you're here. And we'll spend a couple more weeks on it. But again, we're going to focus on kind of pulling out the main part of the material. Those of you that are literally in the course, open up your test, write your test. I know you've got 21 tests to finish before you can even sit for your verbal exam, and bring us your questions. Some of those questions are hard. And unless you hired a mentor, which is another $1,200, you got no one to call. And our customer service people aren't always certified. So we're not there for you 24 hours a day. So this is the place to ask those questions. If you're interested in uploading a handwriting sample and getting feedback, this is definitely not the place to do it. There's 88 people on the call. The place to do that is on the silver monthly call. We are now at class 115. So do the math on that. What's that, 9 years, 10 years? The last Monday of the month, we have a group of people. I think they pay $7 or $17 a month, depending on if you get a bonus or not. You upload handwriting samples, you watch the replays. It's probably one of the most in-depth class, because I know when you're learning this, you get stuck and you sit there and go, man, I wonder what Pooja would say. Wonder what Bart would say about this. Well, we're on the call. We'll take you through that. I think it's next week. It's got to be next week, because
next week, yes.
Yeah, it's really 4 days from now. It's Monday. I think that. Let me show you something. I'd much rather you join the certification course if you're on the fence, but just in case this interests you, and I think this is my favorite classes because it's got such a small group of people that show up. And there's some really amateurs there, and it makes you feel really smart because there's a lot of dumb questions. And when I say there's no dumb questions, I mean that I know it's just a basic question, but people feel dumb when they ask it. But man, you got to start somewhere. You ought to see me play guitar 2 years ago. It was dumb. I had a lot of dumb questions, right? And I'm still not very confident in that area. So I totally get where you're coming from. Just because I've been doing this since I was 5 years old doesn't mean that you're going to instantly get it. This is the homepage for Handwriting University. Right here, $1 trial offer. That's the silver course. Takes you into the archives, takes you into the replays, takes you into the Monday night class. You can upload samples. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. It's once a month, but that's a great, especially those of you guys on a budget. If you're broke and you're having COVID problems, spend the $1, spend the $7 a month. That's probably a really great place for you guys. If you can afford it, send us an email. We'll get you into this bigger course, which of course is more like $2,000. And then if you get a mentor, it's a little bit more. So those are the sort of the offers that we have that you want to get deeper in the community. Most of the time, I was just telling somebody, I said, it's really interesting. We haven't had a class where the unenrolled person can sit and visit with me. in 10 years, Pooja. Like the paid classes, silver.
Yeah.
The webinars are pre-recorded. Like it was hard to get access to me and Pooja and some of the trainers. So I'm kind of glad that we ran a few ads and we got you guys back. And Marcia, we missed you. And Sandy, you guys have been gone for 10 years. I'm so glad you're back in. And if you're not getting any emails, let us know. If you don't open an email or you unsubscribe in the last 10 years, the system won't email you. So even though you may be on the list, the system has probably blocked you. So if you're not getting a couple of emails a month, please reach out to us. We can unblock you. We tell the system that you actually do like us. You don't hate us. We're not spammers. And you'd like to get information on today's call. We had about 700 people sign up for this little workshop, and we have 88 here. So what happens is you don't get the email. It goes to spam. Google blocks it, Yahoo blocks it. So go through there, fish those down, and make sure that you're getting the communication. You know, we're not a big company, but we don't have a staff that can call you every day and remind you to show up to class. We can't do that. So, Pooja, we've gone at least 12 minutes afterwards. Again, we'll do it next Thursday at the same time. Please mark your calendar. You may not get an email. We will send them, but that doesn't mean you'll get them. Same place, same Zoom code, same time period. Pooja, any closing comments about what we're doing next week? And again, thank you guys for being here.
Two things. The very first thing, homework for our graduates, people who are actually into the course. We covered sensitivity to criticism as a stroke. I would definitely recommend all of you to actually see the trait stacking, because that is where the true trait stacking comes. You can see sensitivity to criticism without the loops also. So that's there in your course. Please check it, how you will be able to find out that the person is he's got sensitivity to criticism without the loops. So the whole thing is there in the course. I would definitely love you to check in the course and see how you can stack the traits. Next class, we'll be talking more about the defense mechanisms and trait stacking. The second thing for Marcia, as Bart said, that we don't add on the traits which are not relevant. But Handwriting University has been so nice that if you actually come up with a trait that you think is relevant and you have done your research on it, Bart is actually giving us an opportunity to see. And we do talk about it, but we always say that this is something that our graduate or someone has actually come up with. Feel free to use it and give us a backup so that eventually, if it is a proven trait, we can actually add it on.
Thank you.
So agree that we won't take the traits that is not proven, but any trait that you think that in your community you have seen, we are okay to open it to the graduates so that everyone can analyze, bring their feedbacks, and open it for everyone. This is how the community grows, and we encourage new people to actually work more on that. And it was lovely having you, and I'm hoping all the old, not old as in old, but all our alumni, please join us. And I want to have this class even after COVID, as 85 people, everyone back in the whole. That was the whole idea when I actually thought of the whole class. But really, very, very thrilled to have you all here. Thank you so much.
Very fun.
Okay, guys. And remember, if you're not part of our Handwriting Graduates Facebook group, those would probably get to you as fast as emails these days. Groups tend to get notifications. So jump over here to Handwriting University students and graduates. You have to be accepted in, just answer a little survey what course you own, even those in the 101 or 201 or 301 are part of that group. We just find sometimes email doesn't get through. Sometimes your Facebook messages do. But this is also a really good place to have a longer in-depth discussion about Megan's handwriting, about any of the posts that we put up there. It's kind of a fun little group. So you guys are all invited if you're part of our family. That again, if you're not getting email, send us an email, support@handwritinguniversity.com. We'll check you're making sure that you get the email. If you're here, I know you're on our list, or you should have been, unless someone just randomly gave you a Zoom link, but we want to make sure that you're registered, and we'd love to have you back. So thanks so much, guys. I'll see you in not 24 hours, 7 days, 6 days and 23 hours. We'll see you then, and be safe, everybody. We want to make sure that you're with us next year as we keep going through this.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.